The wind screamed through dead horse paths like the dying breath of something sacred. Snow fell sideways, thick as sorrow, burying the trail in white silence. A lone rider emerged, soaked in blood, not his own, dragging behind him a second horse, riderless but burdened. The saloon doors blew open with a crack. Poker chips froze mid-toss. A battered figure stood framed in snow and silence, coat stiff with dry blood, wide brim hat casting shadow over ice-blue eyes. "Name's Elijah Boone," he said. "Got a letter. Says Sheriff Tillman's dead. And I got a debt to pay." He tossed a blood-stained envelope onto the bar. A half-drunken man reached for it, only for Elijah's revolver to whisper up, calm, steady, unflinching. "Best you let the past speak for itself." Behind the bar, the old barkeep nodded and took the letter gently, like it might burn through his skin. The saloon went still, but the tension wrapped around every breath. Outside, the second horse neighed. Its saddle was empty, but lashed the horn was a wrapped body, limbs bound respectfully, face covered with a blanket hand-woven in Lakota symbols. 20 years earlier, the child who now rode into hell had been found half-frozen in that very pass. Skin pale, eyes wild, barely able to speak. The one who found him? A native scout named Gray Otter, exiled from the 7th Cavalry after Sand Creek, cursed by both sides for surviving what he couldn't stop. Gray Otter had no kin. He'd lost everything in that firestorm, tribe, woman, even his name among the Lakota, but he took in that orphan boy, raised in between two worlds. How to track elk in the snow, how to speak in silence, how to aim true and never shoot unless it was so deep necessary. They'd vanished from the white man's maps. Rumors said they hunted buffalo ghosts in the north. Others said they'd become hired scouts for the army, guiding troops to kill men they called brother. Now one returned to the other's body, wrapped in honor, to the place where the wounds began. 2 miles outside the town of Burnt Tree, a woman stumbled into the preacher's chapel just before dawn, her dress torn, her feet cut up from running through mesquite and shale. She held no words. Only a bundle clutched to her chest. A baby, no more than days old, sickly and silent. Sheriff Tillman had been found hanged behind the jailhouse the night before, hands bound with his own belt, tongue cut out and stuffed with buffalo grass. "Someone settling old blood," whispered the undertaker as he hammered the pine lid shut. Back at the saloon, Elijah stood alone at the fire, coat steaming. He rolled a worn coin between his fingers, the same one Gray Otter gave him the day they crossed into Mexico and never looked back. A lanky rancher stepped forward, hat in hand, voice cautious. "I know that coin. You Elijah from up near Fort Lyon? Gray Otter's boy." "I was—" The man nodded, removing his hat. "Then you ought to know the old man left you something. Buried out by the river's bend, lockbox under the stone cairn. Said you'd know when to dig it up." "I know," Elijah replied. Behind him, someone stirred. The preacher's son, now grown and wearing a badge far too large for his courage. "You best leave," he snapped. "This town don't need another half-breed story stirring dust." Elijah's silence was louder than any bullet. In the alley, an old woman peeked from behind cracked shutters and whispered to her granddaughter. "That boy was dead once. They said he never cried, not even when they found his ma skinned on the fence post." Whispers rippled through town like locusts in drought. By sundown, the coffin had been placed inside the chapel. The woman with the baby hadn't spoken a word since arriving. The child wailed all night. Elijah sat alone at Gray Otter's grave. He hadn't buried him under a stone. He left a saddle instead, Gray Otter's old war saddle, with feathers tied to horn and arrow scars in the leather. He lit a fire and pulled out the lockbox. Inside were 5 things. A compass with Lakota markings scratched over army steel, a child's drawing of a red river and 2 riders under a full moon, a bullet carved from white quartz, a tattered army ledger, names of those who ordered Sand Creek, a letter written in Gray Otter's uneven hand. "If you read this, I'm gone. You owe no man nothing. But there's one thing I could never finish. The men who burned my people live fat in Burnt Tree. Judge Callister, Reverend Maycomb, Marshal Brigg. They made it look like justice. You were just a boy. Now you're the arrow. Ride clean. Ride right. Don't let the flame die in silence. The wind carried the scent of storm. Somewhere behind him, coyotes howled. At dawn, Elijah loaded the saddle with gray otter's war blanket, slung the compass around his neck, and tucked the quartz bullet into his belt pouch. Then he walked toward the town chapel. Inside, the woman finally spoke. Her voice cracked like frost on dry leaves. They took my sister, left me the baby, said to deliver it to the judge. It's his. Elijah stepped closer. What's your name? Clara. He looked at the baby. It had eyes like gray otter. Where's your sister now? Clara's jaw trembled. Out past Snake Hollow. They keep girls there until they ain't no good no more. Behind them, the church bell rang 3 times. The war drum had begun. By sunset, Elijah was no longer alone. An old figure stepped out from the pine shadows, lean, gray hair braided with feathers, moccasins dusted in red clay, a face like canyon stone. It was Red Elk, once a brother-in-arms to Gray Otter, now half ghost, half myth. I saw smoke, Red Elk said. Felt the earth move. I heard otters cry and crows. Elijah nodded once. We ride at dawn. There's blood that needs reckoning. Red Elk studied him. You still fight with white man's fire? Elijah unsheathed his revolver, then tossed it aside. I fight with his purpose. The two stood silent, eyes fixed on the dark horizon where Snake Hollow waited like a coiled serpent. One last ride, one last storm. The ghosts were gathering. They left Burnt Tree before first light, hooves muffled by fresh snow and silence. Red Elk rode bareback, the way of his people. Elijah rode with his head low, wide-brimmed hat casting shadows over a face hardened by loss. Behind them, Clara and the baby rode in a rickety wagon they'd taken from the church, blankets bundled tight around them. The trail to Snake Hollow cut through blighted cottonwood groves and frost-choked arroyos. Coyotes tracked them from the ridges. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from horses. They know we're coming, Red Elk said, scanning the ridge lines. Vultures circle ahead, always circle before blood. By noon, the wagon broke an axle near Bitter Creek. Clara helped Elijah carry the baby across the frozen stream, while Red Elk scouted ahead. The sun flashed silver on his blade as he signaled back. 3 bodies lay gutted by the water, girls, maybe 16 at most. Each wore a red ribbon at the wrist. Each had a C burned into the shoulder. Clara collapsed when she saw them. That's where they sent my sister. The ribbons meant we belonged to Callister. C for his name. Elijah's jaw clenched. He wears a black robe, but walks with the devil. They called it a home for redemption, she whispered, but it was a stable for souls. He knelt beside one of the bodies, noticing a broken locket in her palm. Inside was a sketch, not of a man, but a bird. A sparrow, wings open. I've seen this before, he murmured. Red Elk nodded. The mark of the Sparrow Sisterhood. The ones who tried to escape. They branded themselves rebels, witches, but they were just trying to live. Thunder again. Closer now. The trail narrowed into a canyon framed by bloodstone cliffs and peppered with bones. Elijah paused, listening. Somewhere high above, a shot cracked. The world went silent for a second. Then Clara screamed. Red Elk had been hit. A graze across the side of his skull. Blood poured down into his eye, blinding him. Elijah dragged him behind the wagon as bullets pinged off the rocks. We're pinned, Elijah hissed. 2 shooters, maybe more. He looked at Clara, who cradled the baby beneath her shawl. You stay low. Whatever happens, you ride back to Burnt Tree if we fall. Red Elk grunted, eyes fierce. No, not yet. I've seen the end. It's not here. Elijah handed him the quartz bullet. Then use it well. Red Elk slipped the bullet into his old flintlock. This stone remembers Sand Creek. Now it speaks. Elijah moved like water, gliding between shadows, rising like breath behind the first shooter. A knife to the throat. Silent. Final. He took the man's repeater and moved again. Red Elk, half blind, used echoes and instinct to fire into the cliffs. His bullet struck true. A clean kill. The second sniper tumbled like a broken bird from the rocks above. Blood soaked the canyon floor. They pressed on. As the sun fell behind the peaks, they reached Snake Hollow. What had once been a church mission now rotted behind high fences and rusted iron gates. Inside, lanterns flickered through broken windows. Men laughed. A woman screamed. Elijah whispered to Clara, "You know the layout?" Left wing held the older girls. Right was for the children. The judge stayed upstairs, guarded. Red Oak handed Elijah a flask of crushed herbs. "Burn this. Smoke will blind them. Eyes water. Noses bleed. I used it once to escape the army." Elijah nodded and took the pouch. Time to end this. Night fell hard. The three of them crept to the edge of the compound. Clara kissed her baby's forehead and handed him to Red Elk. "Keep him safe." Elijah lit the pouch, tossing it through a side window. A sickly green smoke poured out. Screams followed. Doors burst open. Guards staggered out, eyes streaming, coughing blood. Elijah moved through the chaos like a ghost. One by one, he dispatched them. A bullet to the heart, a knife in the back. He wasn't reckless. He was precise. Inside the church, Judge Callister stood at the altar, his face lit by stained glass fire. He wore his robe and a pistol, and beside him, chained to the pew, was Clara's sister, eyes wide, mouth bloodied. "I knew you'd come," the judge said. "Always thought Gray Otter would send his mongrel pup one day. You strung up Sheriff Tillman," Elijah said. Tillman got weak, started asking questions about the girls, about the land we cleared for the railroad. He laughed. "You think you're justice? You're just a stray mutt raised on savage lies." Elijah stepped forward. "You hanged my mother, didn't you?" Callister's smile faltered. "She was a witch. Slept with that redskin. Had a half-breed bastard. Preacher said it was a mercy." Elijah shot him to the heart. The stained glass shattered with the echo. Clara rushed to her sister and broke the chains with Callister's drop keys. Red Oak entered, holding the baby. "It's done," he said. "For now." But upstairs, Marshal Brigg waited. He was already loading his shotgun, muttering scripture. Elijah found him kneeling before a rusted crucifix. "You came too late," Brigg said. "You think killing us changes what's buried here? Truth dies with the dirt." "No," Elijah whispered. "Truth rides with the living." Brigg fired. Elijah Dove rolled behind a pew. The blast missed, but barely. He rose, leveled his rifle. Brigg shouted, "I watched your mother burn. I lit the fire." Elijah hesitated. His hands trembled. Red Oak's voice echoed from the stairwell. "The child sees you. The baby. The next generation." If Elijah became the thing he hunted, what future was left? He lowered the rifle. "I don't need to kill you," he said. "You'll rot alone. Let the land remember your name in silence." But Clara didn't hesitate. She shot Brigg through the face. Justice or vengeance? Sometimes the line blurred like smoke over winter ground. Outside, the snow had stopped. Stars blanketed the sky like cold witnesses. They buried the girls in the orchard behind the church, laid them gently beneath the cottonwoods. Clara tied red ribbons to each grave. One grave remained empty for those never found. Elijah placed a broken locket on the last mound. He whispered in Lakota, "Midikyoyazine, all my relations." Red Elk touched his shoulder. "We ride back now, but not as we came." Elijah nodded. "I know." In Burnt Tree, the townsfolk watched him return like ghosts rising from their own legends. Clara's sister walked with head high. The baby cooed in Red Oak's arms. Elijah bore no smile, only the coin still turned between his fingers. That night, Red Oak built a fire outside the chapel. He took Gray Otter's compass, opened it, then closed it again. "Where does it point now?" Elijah asked. Red Oak smiled. "Home." But Elijah knew he had no home anymore. Only one more ride. At dawn, the fire was still burning outside the chapel, crackling beneath a cottonwood heavy with frost. Elijah stood before it alone, staring at the saddle that marked Gray Otter's grave. He held the white quartz bullet in one hand, turning it over in the light. The child cooed softly behind him, swaddled in Clara's arms. Her sister sat nearby, head bowed in silence. Red Oak dozed under a buffalo hide, murmuring in a tongue older than the wind. Elijah looked toward the eastern ridge, where the sun rose blood orange behind the hills. There was one name left on Gray Otter's ledger, Reverend Maycomb. In town, church bells rang as the preacher climbed his pulpit, fire and fury in his voice. The judge was dead, the marshal too, and the devil, he claimed, walked now in Burnt Tree with savage tongue and a bastard's name. They rose from the dirt. Maycomb cried, from the filth of two worlds. You think this town don't know the truth of Elijah Boone? He is the son of fornication, of a savage and a witch. People shifted in their pews. Some nodded, others looked away. Outside, Elijah saddled his horse in silence. Red Oak joined him. You don't have to go in alone, he said. I do, Elijah replied. This is where the fire ends. He rode slowly down Main Street. Rifle on his back, hat low, the wind chasing tumbleweeds ahead of him. Windows shuttered. Mothers pulled children off porches. The town held its breath. The chapel stood like a monument to buried lies. Elijah dismounted, tied his horse, and stepped inside. Sunlight poured through the stained glass, painting the pews in red and gold. Reverend Maycomb stood frozen mid-sermon, one hand on the good book, the other gripping a derringer tucked beneath the pulpit. Elijah said nothing. He just walked down the aisle, boots thudding on worn wood. Your mother was a whore, Maycomb sneered. She seduced that red dog, and when she bore you, she cursed this land. Elijah reached the front. The congregation watched like cattle in a thunderstorm. She begged you for mercy, Elijah said, voice low. You tied her to the fence, let them carve her open, left me in the cold. Maycomb's hand twitched. You don't get justice, he spat. You get forgiveness or fire. Elijah pulled the quartz bullet from his belt and placed it on the pulpit. This one carries the weight of a village, of mothers burned and sons buried nameless. It doesn't go to you. Not today. Then he turned his back. Maycomb screamed and raised a derringer, but a shot rang out from the doorway. Clara stood there, smoking pistol in hand. Maycomb slumped backward, blood blooming like red scripture across his chest. The church fell silent. The baby cried. Later, Elijah stood over his mother's grave, a marker place at last. Just a single stone with the word. Miriam, loved, hated, remembered. Red Oak came beside him, holding a small wooden box. Inside was a compass. It never pointed to land, he said, only to the place where you last told the truth. Elijah took it. The needle spun for a moment, then stilled, pointing west. I'm leaving, Elijah said. Too much ash in the wind here. Red Oak nodded. I'll stay. These girls, they need stories. They need songs. Clara stepped forward. She held out the baby. I named him Otter, she whispered. He's got your eyes. Gray Otter's heart. Elijah touched the child's cheek. Make sure he never learns hate first, he said. Let him ride with honor, not vengeance. He saddled up before sundown. One last ride. No destination, just the road and the silence. As he reached the top of Dead Horse Pass, he looked back. The town shimmered in twilight, changed forever. Behind him, the wind whispered through pines. Some said he became a ghost, guiding lost travelers through snowstorms. Others said he died in a war far to the south. But some still swear, if you ride west with the right heart and clean hands, you'll find him, saddle empty, fire warm, compass waiting. And in the dust, only the truth remains.